The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's December the 30th, 2024. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined once again by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day. And Matt, I'm going to be honest, this is a tough one for me, getting up this morning and doing this show, because I'm still feeling kind of grumpy about what we witnessed up in Orlando this weekend. And, look, I mean, I felt going into the game that it was a meaningless bowl game. I thought it was absolutely amazing, the effort that Mario Cristobal was able to get out of his players to play an Iowa State team that really was pretty good. I mean, very well coached, very sound, and very competitive. And they battled them tooth and nail the entire way, all the way up to the final whistle. But man, like, there's just so many like goofy things. Cam Ward's decision to play, which I didn't think was a good one. I mean, I don't think there's an agent in America that would have recommended to him that he play in that game. But then when you find out after the fact that he was really only supposed to play the first quarter, and then they stretched it to the first half, and then at that point you're in the heat of battle, and suddenly he's not playing anymore. And then Jacoby George sits down with him, and Elijah Arroyo sits down with him, and for the most part. And Arroyo went back in a little bit. And Restrepo's already out, and Sam Brown, was gone too. I think he wasn't eligible. And for these guys to put the type of effort that they put into that game and end up losing was just devastating. I mean, Inez Cooper walked into the locker room and walked right out the back door, and he was sitting out in the concourse behind the locker room areas, just staring down at the concrete. And I was trying to look out for him for a while because there was no staffers out there or anything, and so I took it upon myself. He's a nice kid and everything, and I took it upon myself to try to keep an eye on him and make sure nobody was harassing him or bothering him or anything. And then finally, one of the Miami staffers came out and stood with him. He was just totally demoralized. I mean, he sat there for 15 minutes just staring at the concrete, trying to cool down after another disappointing loss. 3 of them here in the final month or so of the season that just derailed everything that they had going. And to see the defense show up again with tons of confusion out on the field, and now it's almost inevitable. It would be the greatest shock in the world if Lance Guidry were back next year. I got to think that Mario Cristobal is taking a look at Chevish Jackson. Just a horrible year from the DBs. So you got that likely coming up on the horizon. I haven't even brought up the name Emory Williams yet. And we've both been very complimentary of Emory. Everybody who watches him in practice, I've watched it with my own eyes, sees that he does have ability, and he's a very accurate thrower and does a good job. But man, he comes in the second half, and partially due to the play calling and the conservatism, and partially due to things breaking down around him, he could not have looked worse. Okay. And now you have all these question marks with the quarterback position, with the offense, the defense. And suddenly, Matt, you have a football program that, I mean, I don't want to be a drama queen here, but this is a lot of chaos, a lot of disarray going into the off season for 2025. And one of the things that's on the website today that we'll talk about is we take a look at the roster, we take a look at the transfer portal, and there's really not a position on this team that does not need to be addressed here very, very soon, moving forward, just to make this team competitive in 2025. And so, man, I feel like I got hit by a truck. And I mean, it's like, fortunately, I did not, though. But I will tell this story. I took the Bright Line up to Orlando, and I was on, I think it was like an 8:15 train, and then 2 hours later, the train that left at like 10:15 in Delray Beach smashed into a fire truck, okay, going 100 miles an hour or something close to that, smashed into a fire truck that was just sitting on the tracks, okay, totally destroyed the front of the train. Some people got injured, so I was able to dodge that bullet by being on an earlier train. But, Matt, I'm going to give you the floor. Just a tough weekend for the Hurricanes, and somehow Mario Cristobal's got to pull it together. He's devastated, but got to pull it together. A lot of work to be done here in the next few weeks.
My my New Year's resolution is to only be positive. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true. Because it would be impossible. This is what bothered me and probably bothered a lot of fans. And I don't know if people have said it quite like this yet. But the problem that I had was I feel like the second half of the Iowa State bowl game is what this team would have been without Cam Ward for the whole year. So without Cam Ward, we're looking at a 5-win team, a 6-win team, maybe.
It was scary. I agree.
And so as you extrapolate that to next year, I think that's where fans, it's not frustration, it's fear. It's what the heck is going on? This is the third year of Mario Cristobal's team, and without a free agent who wasn't supposed to be here, we're going 5-7, 7-6, and probably 5, 6, maybe 7 wins again. What the hell? It doesn't add up. And I've said this ever since NIL became a thing. I said the worst thing that ever happened to Mario Cristobal is NIL, because he's such a great recruiter, and it negates some of that. Actually, a lot of that, when half his team this year was transfer portal guys, because recruiting and development has always been his benchmark, his hallmark. His culture is built on that. And now players don't buy into systems. They don't buy into cultures. They literally buy. They just buy. There's no buying into. I mean, they have a fortune, so they could just buy. And Jay Leno, there's rumors he's gotten beat up by the mob. I personally just think it's Simeon Barrow that's taken visits to Jay Leno's house. I mean, that's a sign of a culture gone awry when you have guys throwing punches in the middle of the game on the sideline. That's not a good look for me.
I don't know if this is true or not. Somebody told me the fight was about a space on the bench, and Marquise Lightfoot was sitting on the bench, and Simeon Barrow asked him if he would get up and give him a space to sit so he could rest. He had been in the game, and Marquise Lightfoot wouldn't get up. And, I don't know if that's true. It didn't look like that on the video of the fight, so I don't know. But somebody told me that.
Wasn't Simeon Barrow the one who tried to quit after he arrived in Miami, or am I misremembering?
Well, there was speculation he might leave, yeah.
Well, he went home. He arrived, didn't like the humidity, and went home.
No, it wasn't humidity. Somebody tried to steal him under the table in the NIL market. Somebody tried to make him a better offer.
All right. What people were saying at the time was that he was not happy with the weather and with the whole work ethic thing. And as the season went on, he got worse. So, like Tyler Barron, this is the whole thing, right? How does the team get worse? How do you lose 3 of the final 4 games? Let's not beat around the bush. Iowa State got annihilated by Arizona State, and I guess we'll find out in the playoffs if Arizona State's any good, but I don't think Arizona State's as good as people think. I don't think they're that good a team. Iowa State's not very good. They were very slow on both sides of the ball. So the fact that Miami's defense was that bad and that pathetic, and and the offense couldn't function without Cam Ward. I mean, just the dichotomy, you can look it up, Gary, of seeing Cam Ward lead touchdown drive after touchdown drive when they weren't fumbling the ball, and then to see how Shannon Dawson called plays.
I mean, that's what shocked me the most. It was I like, how do you just shut down your offense? And I like Shannon. I would love to be able to sit down and talk to him. I wish we had immediate availability with him this week, because he totally shut down the passing game. Now, is that because he doesn't believe in Emory Williams? Is that because the guys that they had out there running routes didn't know what the hell they were doing and everything was breaking down? So you can't fix that during a game. So he chose to just run the football. I don't know what his reasoning was, but it was distressing. I mean, I don't know what, I mean, it was horrifying because that is not what has been going on in the practice field for the entire, 11-month cycle of the season. I mean, Emory Williams practices the same offense that Cam Ward's been running every single day on the practice field. And everybody that including ourselves who have been out at practice, sees that Emory Williams is a pretty accurate quarterback and throws the ball relatively well. Now he's going against the Miami secondary. I'll put that qualifier on it. But that Shannon Dawson totally shut down the offense and just ran the football the entire second half, and they only lost by 1 point. I mean, all these things are absolutely amazing. But I mean, it was scary how bad Emory looked in this situation, because everybody's thinking Emory can be the quarterback next year. And if that is what we're going to get for an offense next year, and that's what they're going to put out there, man, I mean, you can't even imagine it, man.
Okay, so there's a lot to break down there. I looked at Emory's film this morning. You guys can see it too. It's not that Emory's not a good passer, an accurate passer. As you watch the actual plays that he was allowed to pass on during the game, it became pretty apparent he was staring down receivers and not sure what to do. Like, he wasn't sure where to go with the ball. And that's not, if a quarterback can throw the ball accurately, has a good enough arm, which he made his best throw was a great throw to Elijah Arroyo in a huge 4th and 4 situation, right? That was his best pass of the game. You can make a throw like that. You can make any throw. I mean, that's as tough a throw as you're going to have and as tough a situation as you're going to have. I blame Shannon Dawson a lot for how Emory Williams looked, because Emory was not put in a good situation. He was put in with 2nd and 3rd team receivers that were running the wrong routes, from what I've heard. And he didn't spend the whole bowl preparation practices with the first team. That was Cam Ward. I mean, from what I understand, he got first team reps, but like they were split and not even 50-50. So, I don't know that we can make a definitive statement that Emory Williams isn't the guy. What we can say is Miami needs a portal quarterback, which we already knew. And they probably need a top portal quarterback, right? Because, Emory Williams, his freshman year, started 2 games, and they managed him very well, and he played fine for a true freshman. Against Ball State, he crushed it, right? Cam Ward crushed it. He crushed it against a bad Ball State defense. And now this game was a travesty. And, you can blame Emory Williams. You can blame Shannon Dawson. Probably both of them deserve some of it. But it was pretty clear that Emory Williams did not have a grasp on how to attack a pretty good Iowa State defense, whereas Cam Ward did, So whose fault is that? I mean, Emory Williams can throw the ball, and he can throw it accurately. He had one pass that was very off target. The other ones either was hit as he was throwing, or they were on target, And were they bad decisions? Yes, he threw one where the guy had leveraged the inside. The cornerback had leveraged the inside, but the pass was there. And then there was the one that he sailed over Ray's head. That was the bad pass. But we've seen past Miami quarterbacks who can't even throw accurately, right? Jakari, Brown. You can go all the way back to Kirby Freeman days. I mean, we've seen quarterbacks at Miami that can't even reach an open receiver very well, right? Tate Martell. This guy can at least throw the ball to the receiver who was open. It's just he didn't know where to go. And as you look at the film today that I broke down, he never comes off that first read. And again, I don't know whose fault that is, but I would blame the teacher, right? Because who's the coach? Because if your student isn't prepared, that reflects just as much on you. And Shannon Dawson's had this guy in his system for 2 years. You explain to me how a guy can sit in Shannon Dawson's quarterback room and look as confused as he looked. Like, I know Emory's smart. I know that for a fact. He's a very smart young man. So how does it get to that point where he doesn't seem to grasp what is happening around him? That's on Shannon Dawson. And it's crazy because Shannon Dawson ran one of the top offenses in the country this year. But Tyler Van Dyke offense was no good with Shannon Dawson. Next year, will it be good with Shannon Dawson? I don't know. That, to me, next year with Shannon Dawson, that will be the definitive verdict on if Shannon Dawson's actually a good coordinator or not, because you can make the argument that this was just Cam Ward's offense. I mean, he's that good. Like, Cam Ward, when you have the top quarterback in the nation and a top 5 NFL draft pick at quarterback, he could make me look good, calling plays. It was the Cam Ward offense, and a lot of those plays, he made them himself. What you saw with Emory was staying in the pocket trying to make passes, and even rushing 3, they were collapsing the pocket on him. So it was a very difficult situation for Emery. He looked bad. I'm not going to beat around the bush. He looked bad. But again, whose fault was that? I think it was both of their faults. I think it was the entire offense's fault. I think it was Shannon Dawson's fault. Obviously, some of it's on Emery. And I don't know where you go from here. I don't know where you go from here, except honestly, the answer to me is to fix the defense. Because, and I'm going to predict this now. I'm always right. I think the defense next year will be better than the offense next year. I think Miami's going to spend a lot of money on defense. They already have. I think those defensive players are good enough that with the right system, and I agree with you. I don't see how Lance Guidry survives this. I don't see how a lot of these assistant coaches survive this on defense. I think in the right system, playing these guys where they want to be played in the way they want to be played and the best way to play them, right, where safeties aren't covering wide receivers on the edge and one-on-one down the field and stuff like that. I think this can be a very successful group. I think this can be a top 30 defense next year, as it was 2 years ago, with a lot of the same personnel, the Ruben Baines and these guys. And Wesley Bassines actually had a decent year at the end of the day, and OJ Frederic, and they brought in a couple of 3 DBs already in the portal. And they're going to add more portal pieces. Now, the offense, you lose your top 5 receivers. You don't have an answer at quarterback right now. I know they're going to chase a portal quarterback at some point. Probably somebody who's not even in the portal yet, right? Because all these teams that finish bowl games and that playoff games, they can still go in the portal. And the offensive line and running game should be fine. But I think Miami will be a lot better on defense. It can't be worse. And I also think the schedule is so difficult next year. So you better have a better defense. There's just a lot that needs to be sorted out, and it's hard to predict right now what the team's going to look like. But I do see a world where this defense can be pretty good next year. I really do. And I know fans are going to think I'm crazy for saying it, but I honestly believe that.
All right. So there's so many little subplots here that we can talk about. Let me start with Cam Ward's decision to play in the game. The truth is that he wanted to break the touchdown record. He threw a touchdown pass that it gave him the record. He's the all-time leading touchdown passer in Division I NCAA history. A phenomenal accomplishment. He's now in the record books. That clearly was a lot of his motivation for going out there. But I had heard it was initially supposed to be a quarter, and it got stretched in the heat of the battle to the first half. But at that point, it was going to be Emery's show the rest of the way. Your thoughts on that decision, how it played out, and the decision by Mario Cristobal to go along with that plan, which, because it was never explained before the game or after the game, has drawn an enormous amount of national attention. And a lot of people are going after Cam Ward, like he abandoned his team. And, I don't see it that way. Like I didn't, that was not the way it played out. That wasn't the case. So I'm asking you also to throw in there how Mario handled it after the game and choosing not to explain what had actually really taken place out there.
Well, it's all really weird and annoying to me, because I had actually heard whispers before the game that Cam Ward was playing because he wanted to break the record. I had not heard that he was going to opt out after the first quarter at halftime or whatever. But it made no sense, because all Cam Ward said all year is, I don't care about records. I don't care about trophies. I just want to win games. He said that over and over and over again. So he's a hypocrite. I mean, that's just by definition. And that's why people are upset. You can't say one thing over and over again and do something else. People do not react well to that. He deserves the criticism. I know some people are in his corner because obviously he had a great year and he made Miami fans very, very happy, and he's so talented. And fans are also saying, well, at least he played a little bit because Restrepo didn't play at all. How come you're not yelling at Restrepo? Restrepo didn't even try to play. But the way that game went, it made it even worse for Cam Ward, because he was on the sideline on that last drive when everyone's like, okay, they'll put Cam Ward back in and now he'll win the game, and at least Miami will win a bowl game for the second time in 13 tries. And Cam Ward just stands there, and watches Emory Williams go in with sort of a blank look on his face, from what I could tell, looking up at the screen. And that was it. That was it. Now, I will rehash that I personally said I wanted Emory Williams to start and play the whole game. In retrospect, they would have been slaughtered, probably. But you know what? We would have also had only Emory taking bowl reps, and maybe it might have looked different. I don't know. But I still wish that I'd seen Emery play the whole game to have a definitive answer, because, really all we had was one drive of desperation in 51 seconds of Emery looking bad. Other than that, he had a ball hit, he threw a little too high that hit off Shamar Kirk's hands that would have been caught by Xavier Restrepo, for instance, who normally would be catching that pass, right? So that would have been a touchdown. And other than that, he threw a couple of short passes before the final drive. And you wouldn't even have been able to tell anything, good or bad, other than the fact that Miami's defense sucks so bad that they put Emery back in the game to a situation where he had to pass the ball down the field, and then he looked terrible. So it would have been nice to see Emery running a normal offense after having a full bowl practice. I still stand by that. Now, would Miami have won the bowl game? I don't think so. They didn't win anyway, but we would have learned more. I don't understand the benefit of Cam Ward playing in this game, other than Cam Ward getting to set a record, which he says he doesn't care about, but apparently he does. And then as for Mario Cristobal not explaining it, I think part of the reason I didn't want to explain it is my understanding is there's some NIL money factored into it. If you opt out of a bowl game, my understanding is there's money attached to playing every month, right? Every game, every month. So there might have been a money NIL component to it he didn't want to get into. I don't understand why Cam Ward couldn't have said himself before the game that, he doesn't, he could have explained it in a certain way, right? Like, listen, I don't want to opt out, but I'm only going to play the first half because X, Y, and Z. I just want to be able to help the team get a big lead, and then I'm not going to be playing anymore, and it's going to be Emery's turn, and hopefully it works out for the best. I mean, that's what Cam Ward should have done. So to blame Mario for something that Cam Ward should have explained himself, I'm not going to do that. It's not Mario's job to speak on Cam Ward's behalf. It's Cam Ward's job to speak on Cam Ward's behalf. And that's why when Mario sidestepped the question afterwards, why should he explain why Cam Ward wouldn't play anymore? That's Cam Ward's problem. If Cam Ward tells you, if I'm a coach and my player comes to me and says, I'm only going to play the first half, coach, because of X, Y, and Z, and, if that's okay with you, that's what I'm going to do. And that to win a bowl game, which is really important to you, you need him to do that. And you say, okay, no problem. Is it my job now to tell the world that, hey, this guy just told me he's only going to play the first half? Because how does that sound as a coach? It sounds like you're throwing your player under the bus. So it was Cam Ward who should have come out and explained himself before or after the game. And now it's just a mess. And I think it hurts his draft stock. This whole thing about quitting on your team, as good as Cam Ward is, he's going to have to explain now to NFL teams why he refused to play the second half and just wanted to get a record. I don't know how that, I know you're shaking your head no, but if I'm an NFL executive, I want that answer. Why would you abandon your team? Why didn't you just go in for the last drive so your team could win a game? It didn't make sense. Were you scared of getting hurt? What about when you're in the NFL and you're in your third year looking for your second contract? Are you not going to be trying hard and not going to be pushing that extra mile because you might get hurt and not get your second contract? I mean, there are legitimate questions for players who do that. So, it's like the UNLV guy opts out after 3 games. No one's even taken him, right? He opted out because some NIL money went south that he thought he was promised. Things like this do not tend to sit well with the executives who pay the big money for these guys. And I don't understand, either Cam Ward should have played or shouldn't have played. I don't understand how you play a quarter or a half. That's nobody's done it before for a reason, because it doesn't look good.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been in any more danger in the third quarter than he was in the first. I mean, once you're stepping foot on the field, you're risking injury. I don't know. The whole thing was very weird, and I don't really agree with you. I think Mario should have explained it. It was way too.
It wasn't his job to. What would he have said?
He should have said that, we had an agreement that he was only going to play the first half. And leave it at that or something. But
that would have been the end all be all. The next question by fans is that your decision, Mario, or Cam's decision? That's what everyone wants to know, right? So then what does the coach say?
Tell
right?
the truth.
It opens the can of worms that Cam needs to explain.
We made it mutually, whatever, but just tell it so that it's not left open and there's not all this crazy speculation going on social media. And
I think in Mario's head, I think that, did you freeze or did I freeze? Somebody froze.
No, we're not frozen. We're good.
I think in Mario's head, he thought with Cam Ward they'd have such a big lead at halftime against this half good team that they wouldn't even nobody would even ask the question after the game. They'd be up by 21 points. Emery would come in and they'd win the game by 14 to 28 points. I think that was in Mario's head what would happen. And it turned out not to be the case. As things just seem to go wrong for Miami way too often.
Listen, everybody knows that I'm a big proponent of Mario Cristobal. I long before he came here for many, many years, I was saying he was the guy to come turn this program around.
You said that? I don't recall that at all.
And I do feel that there was progress this year. I know a lot of people don't, and he's kind of losing the fan base a little bit, but I think he's doing it to himself because of the way he deals with the media and his indifference to the public. And God, I mean,
you know where he got that from, right?
Well,
Saban. That's Saban's playbook.
Mario is not Nick Saban, okay? He's just not.
Oh, I'm telling you, that's who he's trying to be. If you don't think he's trying to be Saban, I don't know what to tell you. Have you watched how he does things?
Hopefully one day he will be. But the thing is, it's like these are unforced situations that just are not necessary. And I'm slowly seeing the media, the fan base, they're turning on him a little bit. And it doesn't need to be this way. I mean, you just listen. They screwed up the last month of the season. No argument. They lost games they shouldn't have lost. Probably shouldn't have lost any of the three, much less all three. But they did. Okay, and it screwed the whole thing up. But there's the fact of the matter is when you go from 5 to 7 to 10 wins, you have made progress. But nobody is looking at this as progress. And to me, that is a public relations problem, and it's like self-inflicted pain, self-harm that to me is just not necessary. And I'm hoping that this whole experience and everything that's gone on is cause for a lot of introspection at Miami football headquarters. I think there's a lot of things that they can do better than what they are doing. And I think this is a critical fork in the road because of the amount of talent that is exiting this program and the burden that they now have. And it's very well noted in your stories that are on the website this morning. They need help at every position on this team.
Yeah, it's not weird. I was going through the offense and defense by position just to see, do they really need people still at these positions? There's not one position where they don't need a transfer portal guy to come in and
not one. And you were probably kind in your evaluation. I think they still need a lot of help. And
I mean, how does this happen? Like, this is, again, I don't want to be so negative. Like, there are positives about this team. Like you mentioned, they did win 10 games for the second time in 21 years or whatever. I mean, that is something, as bad as it ended against a very weak schedule, they did still win 10 games. It could have been worse, right? It could have been worse. But it's the way it happened that really has fans upset. And, what I can't wrap my head around still is I need to see the development. Like, I was so sure when Mario Cristobal came in that he would get top recruits and develop them. And for me to now sit here and say I'm not sure anymore is very disheartening to me, as a guy who likes it when Miami does well. It's a fun team to cover, right? When they do better versus when they do worse. How do they get worse as a team as the season goes along? How do the recruits that are now in their second, third year, a lot of them under Mario Cristobal, not get worse, not have an impact? Ray Joseph was supposed to be this major difference maker. Samson Okunlola was supposed to be this NFL can't miss first round guy at offensive tackle. I mean, you go down the list of a lot of these guys who have come in these three classes, and they just haven't really hit. And by the way, I made a misstatement last show we did 50 years ago. Emory Williams was not a Shannon Dawson recruit, okay? But he is Shannon Dawson's guy in the fact that I've heard him literally tell Emory Williams via second and third hand, but still, he says that that's his guy. Like, that's the guy he feels knows his offense, can run his offense, and now we see what we just saw, right? Very upsetting in that regard also. But yeah, like, who got better this year from last year? Not Ruben Bain, not Akeem Messidor. Who got worse as the year went along? Tyler Barron, Simeon Barrow. That's just the defensive line. Who got worse from last year? Francisco Mauanoa. I would argue Wesley Saints maybe got better. In the secondary, who got worse from last year? Daryl Porter got worse from last year. I mean, how does that happen? I literally, that's just defense, right? I mean, the offense is a different animal. The offense, those guys were really good. Yeah, but in part, maybe that was Cam Ward. If Cam Ward's not there, do those receivers put up those numbers? If Cam Ward's not there, do those running backs have the same running lanes to go through when the defense is trying to stop the passing game?
No.
I don't know. But
No.
like, it's just disheartening that you don't see a lot of these guys who were brought in the last 2 or 3 years really stepping up, getting better. You know, I can't explain it. Maybe you can, maybe someone else can. I can't explain it because that's what Mark Cristobal's always hung his hat on. Hard work. We work harder than anybody else. That's what he says. We work harder than anybody else. We're relentless. You know, this is the culture. Da, da, da. And it's supposed to show up in games, and it's not. So I don't get it.
I mean, I have opinions. I mean, I don't think that their scouting of potential recruits / players is good enough. I think you're going to see Bill Belichick up in North Carolina build an organization there in the mold of an NFL franchise. And that's what these are now. These are NFL franchises. And you're recruiting so many guys between the portal and regular recruiting. You better have, and I'm not just talking about guys, I'm talking about studs, okay, that are experienced, that know what the hell they're doing in a personnel department that are properly screening the kids you're recruiting. And it goes beyond just their physical ability. You have to, you know, the NFL gives all these guys mental acuity tests before draft. You know, they want to know if they're going to be able to know the system and execute plays. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of questions about that in this Miami program right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But then we're also hearing that young guys on the offensive side of the ball weren't executing those plays properly either. And it's becoming a recurring theme here in the program. And like, I don't feel they're doing a good enough job of player evaluation. That's the first thing. And then that's before you get to development. The development on the defensive side of the ball has not been good. And we're going to see some heads, I think, on the chopping block here in the coming hours. I'll be shocked if Lance Guidry is back. I'll be shocked if Chavez Jackson is back as defensive backs coach. You know, we'll see if it extends beyond that. But I think Mario Cristobal has to evaluate the entire program that he has put together here while he's on a relative high right now. And I know everyone's down, but winning 10 games and almost contending for the playoffs and the ACC championship, based on where Miami has been in recent history, that is a high. Okay. The time to address these things is not down the road when you have a disaster and you win 6 games and the fan base is turned on you and it's pretty much over at that point. Okay. This is an opportunity right now to fix these problems and fix them fast. And I just hope that, you know, Mario sees these things, like I see them clear as day, and addresses all of this. They need to restructure this football program like an NFL franchise and get the proper level of personnel in that building. You're going to be spending $30 million on football players. Spend $1 million and have the best damn scouting team that has ever been seen in college football. That's what Belichick's going to try to do up in North Carolina, and put together a scouting organization like an NFL franchise would, that has guys every single day that are properly vetting all these kids, that are talking to people in the high schools, that are doing proper checks at every level of all these players, so that you are upgrading what you are bringing into the building, because you're making way too many mistakes. And in this way, day and age of NIL, mistakes get expensive. And I'm going to use that as a segue to another topic, Matt, I want to talk to you about. This is going to get, I believe this is going to get a little crazy here in the next few days, because there's a 5-day window for Miami players to go into the portal now. And because of the rising costs of NIL, because of the needless wish list, whatever we want to call it, of what we are identifying that they need to make this team competitive in 2025, replace a few coaches, do some other things. You're talking about a major bill. Okay. This is going to cost a lot of money. And the way this has gone in college football, you can't afford to have players on your roster that are overpaid. And I'll use an example. You mentioned him earlier, Samson Okinola, for example. He's a 5-star recruit, came in, commanded a massive NIL deal, multi-year deal. He was supposed to have a pancake franchise. Was one of the first plum acquisitions of John Ruiz's time as the NIL czar of Miami. Obviously, John is not anymore, but Samson got a big NIL deal, okay? And he has not even gotten to the point where they can put him on the field. Okay, that is dead money, Matt. And you can't afford to have dead money anymore in college football. And a kid like that is going to probably be faced with the prospect of taking a massive pay cut in NIL or going into the portal. And I think they're going to have to go down this roster, every kid coming back, and they're going to have to make value judgments on how much they're getting paid NIL and are they justifying that dollar amount. And there's going to be some tough decisions ahead. There's going to be some casualties of those decisions, I believe. I think we're going to see more kids going into the portal. On the flip side, these transfer windows are at every team that played in a bowl are going to be opening up these 5-day windows after the bowl games. And I think we're going to see a lot of guys from those teams going into the portal looking for paydays. So we are anticipating a lot of action in both directions here in the coming days. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that subject, but what do you think?
Yeah. One of the worst systems that has ever been invented because it's destroying the enjoyment of fans for college football. And guess what? The fans are the money, okay? If there's no fans for college football, there's no TV revenue, there's no player revenue. I mean, they're literally killing themselves. That's how bad the NCAA is. They're killing themselves because fans don't enjoy this anymore. It's like when you even following a professional team, you sort of have a continuity with certain players, right? Certain people are the face of your franchise. Now the face of your franchise, nobody loves Miami anymore. Nobody loves Ohio State anymore. Nobody loves Alabama anymore. You remember we used to do stories where players like, it's been my dream to play for the Miami Hurricanes. I'm so excited to be a Miami Hurricane. Now it's been my dream to have $1 million, and now I'm a millionaire. If the NFL literally had every single player available to be a free agent after every single season and go to any other team they wanted to after every single season, picture that, because that's what college football is headed towards. And, I predicted last year and the year before, I said, why would any player not go into the portal? And any player who had a good year should, of course, go into the portal. Find out what the highest bid is. And guess what? The players that don't go into the portal, they're in the portal. You just don't know it because their agent has already spoken to 10 other teams, gotten the highest bid, come back to the original team and said, listen, if you pay us this, we're staying. Otherwise, we're going in the portal. And that's what Jim Larinaga alluded to. That's what Mario Cristobal has talked about with these shady agents, because you don't know if they're even telling the truth. There's no transparency. An agent could literally make up a number that, I'm not going to tell you what team it is, coach, but there's an SEC team offered X player $800,000. You have to match it or we're going in the portal. You don't know if they're telling the truth. Do you think an agent's telling the truth? It's like a car salesman, So I don't envy college coaches anymore whatsoever. I would not want to be a college coach. I don't want to be here right now either, but I'd rather be doing this at 5:30 in the morning than being a college football coach right now, because it is a thankless job. I don't know how these guys do it. And the system is totally broken. It's always been broken. Now it's just becoming much more pertinent in the public eye because of what's happening. I mean, there's guys who are in the portal. If I have announced they're going in the portal, they're staying on their teams for the playoffs. But I'm going in the portal. But I'm gonna stay with my team for the bowl game. How does that work? I don't understand. If you quit your job, do you show up to work the next day and say, I'll do a good job today? Don't worry, I'm gonna do a good job today, even though I already quit. I don't understand what alternate reality we're living in, but it's not a good one.
How about you're going to show up for work, you're going to work for a couple hours, and then you're going to mail in the rest of the day, and you're not going to do any work. I mean, we're seeing everything right now. It's crazy. It really, really is. But we already talked about some of the things. I mean, I really hope that this is an opportunity for Miami to rethink some of the things they're doing, and I hope Mario's on top of that. One of the things, obviously, on the plate, Matt, is the defensive side of the football. to me, the indictment is all the confusion, just the play after play after play, all of the wasted timeouts. People are complaining about time management at the end of the game. If they hadn't wasted a timeout earlier in the second half, getting the defense straight, and then even after the timeout, they almost had to take another timeout because there was confusion even coming after the timeout. But still wasting way too many timeouts. And when you're in a close game down the wire and you need those timeouts, you don't have them. It impacts everything. And it kept them from stopping the clock before the 2-minute warning the other night. And so a lot of confusion on the defensive side of the ball. That is an indictment on the coaches. Your thoughts on the absolute, I'll call it, downfall of defensive coordinator Lance Guidry this year? Probably entered the year relatively well thought of, got an extension recently, and now has totally in 1 year, like, the whole narrative has changed with this defensive coaching staff because of how poorly the defense played, because of the lack of improvement that you mentioned, the fact that they got worse as the season went on, and all the confusion that we were seeing on the field. Your thoughts?
And look, I'm just going to tell it like it is. Mario Cristobal hired Lance Guidry in part because when he was at FIU, he played against Lance Guidry's defense and thought it was this amazing system that was really tough to figure out. And you know what? The first year Lance Guidry was at Miami, it was tough to figure out. Other teams were not figuring it out. He was doing a very good job of bringing blitzes from all different areas, dropping guys into coverage. It was really working well. The problem is, just like Georgia Tech found out with the triple option offense eventually, other teams will eventually adapt and find a way to slow you down. In the case of a Georgia Tech triple option, sometimes not so successfully, but the better defenses were able to. And in the ACC, these are not just lower level defensive coordinators. They're copycat, really good defensive coordinators. And once they found ways to expose Lance Guidry's defense by getting safeties matched up on really fast receivers, by getting linebackers matched up on their slot receivers, by finding defensive ends that are dropping into coverage in zone and hitting receivers in that area, or tight ends that are being covered by defensive ends who are slower. Once they were able to easily identify what they needed to do to get those matchups, Lance Guidry had nothing else to fall back upon. And time after time, we saw these exposed. Every single game they were exposed, all the way into the bowl game, when you see Zaquan Patterson getting beat on a 49-yard route by a receiver, trying to cover him one-on-one on the outside, to Dylan Day trying to cover receivers. You can go on and on, but because it just kept happening. And there's the reason there are busts a lot of times is because these defensive players, especially the safeties, are being asked to do so much that against a look that they're not quite understanding, or a call they're not quite understanding, they're not in the right spot. And it was very unusual, the amount of busts on defense this year. You can blame the players, but if you take a huge sample size of 1,000 players on defense over the last however many years, and you do some sort of analysis on how many busts there were per player per year, I'm going to guarantee you there was more busts per player per year this year than over the last 20 years, okay? I mean, I've watched every game for 20 years at Miami. I cannot remember this many just total defensive busts. And that's not the players. That's not, oh, these players were so dumb on this team. That's a defensive coordinator who is getting out-coached to the point that defensive players are trying to do too much, or trying to cover for each other because they realize there's going to be a problem here, a problem there, and now they're out of position. That's how you get busts, is when guys are trying to do too much. And when guys are trying to do too much, it's because they recognize that the defense isn't working. I don't want to be mean to Lance Guidry, but I think he ruined the season. I do. The defensive players weren't that bad. You put these guys on a different defense. Ruben Bain, Akeem Messidor, Simeon Barrow, Tyler Barron, who started off the year great, right? You keep him mentally strong. Francisco Mauanoa, Wesley Bastanes. These aren't nobodies. These are guys who have already been successful at other places or here, highly successful. Darryl Porter Jr. was successful here. Mish Powell was very successful starting for a national championship game team at Washington at safety. Who am I missing? And OJ Frederic was one of the top freshmen in the conference. You add him to the mix, right? I mean, how did these guys all put together become so bad, other than an explanation that it was the system. That's why Lance Guidry is going to be gone. It's when you have good personnel and an inexplicably bad result, it equals the coordinator. Like, I'm sorry, I don't like to blame coaches, I don't like to blame players, but in this case, I don't have another explanation rationally. If it was one game or two games, I'd say, okay, you know what? Maybe they got out schemed, they had a bad day. But it was almost every single ACC game and the bowl game. Okay, and the only ACC games they were good in were against bad offenses, like FSU. Even USF threw for over 300 yards against these guys. That was the warning shot across the bow when a bad USF offense had 300 passing yards against Miami. And it's a shame, because I said it before the season. I've said it every time we've done this show. Not every time, but every year we've done the show. Sorry, I've said it at some point or another every year we've done the show, that it just seems like when Miami's really good on offense, they're not good enough on defense. And when they're really good on defense, they're not good enough on offense. It's a recurring theme. Every year you have a chance to be good with this program. And it happened again. Like, I keep saying it over and over again. We keep watching the same damn movie over and over again. Only this year's movie was titled The Lance Guidry Saga, it sucked. And like, that's where we're at. And it has to stop at some point. At some point, like I said, next year the defense will be better than the offense. Like, I don't think they're both going to be great. I'm not like pie in the sky going to say, oh, everything's going to be fine, don't worry. I think the defense will be good next year and the offense is going to be average. And they're going to win 8-9 games. That's my prediction right now, not knowing who the hell is going to be on the roster. But you look at that schedule, you look at what happened this year, and like, what other reasonable expectation can you have as I'm sitting here miserable right now? I don't know.
Well, I don't think the personnel was conducive to Lance Guidry defense. I mean, I thought that what we saw the entire year was a shell of the aggressive style of football that he likes to play. And I just don't think he was ever comfortable with the personnel. I think it started there. I think beyond that, the coaching was not up to snuff on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, let's look back to the Gator game. That was the one game this year that I thought they showed up completely prepared. We were not witnessing mental busts or anything like that. And they handled the Gators pretty damn well in the opener, and you felt really good going into the season from there. But you're 100% right. As the season went on, the South Florida game, all the ACC games, the defense was horrendous. And I think the difference between the two was they had the whole off season to prepare for the Gator game. And so all of spring practice, all of fall practice, and the kids were on top of their assignments and knew what the hell they were doing. I don't think that was the case in most of the games this year. And then on top of it, Lance Guidry's not even running his normal schemes. The whole thing fell apart. Big lack of impact talent on the defensive side of the ball, really non-existent. And, it kind of caved in on the Canes. So, all that they can do from here is go try to improve the talent. And you're not going to expect your true freshman to come in and be that answer. They got to find some way somehow to get difference makers in the portal. They've gotten some good players so far. Are they difference makers? Yeah, I don't know. The Blake kid is supposed to be a decent defensive lineman. Is he going to come in and change the face of the defense? Probably not. So it's going to be really interesting, Matt, to see what happens here. There's going to be a lot of change, I think, a lot of upheaval. And I can't even begin to talk about 2025 because we don't know what this team is going to look like. So it's going to be really interesting. But anyway, so just to sum up what we've got for you on the website today, you've got a film study on what Emory Williams did in the bowl game, how he was slow through his progressions, how Shannon Dawson didn't do him any favors. You could check that out. We took a closer look at the returning roster at every position, and you'll see they all need help. So take a look at that, as well as what might happen in the transfer portal. If you didn't catch all of our coverage from Saturday night, that's all still on the website as well. Let's see what else. Zuby's been at the Under Armour All-America game. He's got reports that have already started coming from there on some of the prospects at the Under Armour game that Miami has either signed already or is going to be recruiting. We've got a story on a 2026 four-star safety out of Georgia, Nasir McCoy. He's high on the Canes. You can check that up on that as well. And we will be bringing you all the breaking news as it happens here over the next several weeks as Mario Cristobal tries to pull the pieces together and get his Miami Hurricanes program on an upward trend again as it heads into 2025. So that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. We thank you guys so much for starting out your day with us. For Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you next time.